one who was once blind to the Pharisees. Now Jesus had made clay and opened his eyes on a Sabbath. So the Pharisees also asked him how he was able to see. He said to them, He put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and now I can see. So some of the Pharisees said, This man is not from God, because he does not keep the Sabbath. But others said, How can a sinful man do such signs? And there was a division among them. So they said to the blind man again, What do you have to say about him, since he opened your eyes? He said, He is a prophet. They answered and said to him, You were born totally in sin, and are you trying to teach us? Then they threw him out. When Jesus heard that they had thrown him out, he found him and said, Do you believe in the Son of Man? He answered and said, Who is he, sir, that I may believe in him? Jesus said to him, You have seen him. The one speaking to you is he. He said, I do believe, Lord, and worshipped him. The Gospel of the Lord. This reading, which is specifically picked for today because of our elect, is different than what the regular Sunday reading would be for today. But the idea of the story is here because we're all blind in some way. We are all called. And it can be hard for us to realize what God is calling us to. Sometimes we like to be blind. The Pharisees were arguing. The Pharisees did not want to accept that Jesus was the Messiah. They wanted to fight it with all that they had. In the readings from last week, we had the story of Moses and that idea of holy ground. But yet, I was thinking about that this week as I went to go see our new CDC area, which has 6-week-olds. And you have to take your shoes off to go into that area. And I was wearing lace-up shoes, and I looked and I said, I'm just going to look from here. I don't know what kind of socks I have on. They probably had holes in them. So it's like, I just looked from the gate. We don't like taking our shoes off unless we're home. The reading for today, the regular gospel, is also that story of the prodigal child. The son that was away knew that the only place he could be whole again was home. He came home to be with his dad. He had been blind. He didn't see what was there. He basically wished his dad to be dead, but then realized he needed to be there. He needed to be home. And I think a lot of times in our culture, we're blind to what it means to be home. This church needs to be a place that everybody is accepted and loved. It needs to be a place of faith. It can't be one where some people are saying, I can't believe they believe that, or I can't believe they did that, or have that sticker on their car, or whatever. We're here to find God. And there's so many things working in this world to take us away from our God. We have to have that place where we belong. For me, that sense of home is very different than most people. My sister-in-law just sold her parents' house that she grew up in. That had been her family home her entire life. I was born in New York. We moved to Colorado Springs. Then we moved to France. We moved once within France. We moved to England. I started first grade. Then we moved to New York again. I continued first grade and moved to Aurora, Colorado. And I finished, finally, first grade, all in 1 year. Just before somebody makes a smart aleck comment, I got it done in 1 year. But for me, home was where my family is. For us in our faith, what God's calling us to is to have that sense of home and what's right. And there's so many things in this world that are pulling us away from that. I was at somebody's house talking about some stuff coming up in their life, And I took my phone out of my pocket and put it on the table. And it wasn't even a meal time. And I said, "Oh, Father, can you do us a favor? Phones are not allowed at our dining room table, ever." I said, "Oh, I'm happy to put this away. Do you want to just keep it for me?" Our school is now a phone-free zone. If a kid needs to bring a phone to get a hold of a parent after school, their phone gets locked up in the office. And you do not want us finding your child with their phone. We don't want that. And people go, "Well, isn't that a little extreme?" I don't think kids should have internet access alone until they're 16. I'd like to make it 25, but I'm not allowed to do that. We look at different things and how they affect us. Do you know that, just say the app TikTok, I'll pick on one that's my favorite one to pick on. That algorithm breeds an addiction. I have the study, I will email it to you. It also then controls how our young people think. Have you ever noticed all the weird ideas coming up in our culture? Look at social media. Every time I talk to a young person that's contemplating something extreme in their life or struggling with depression, I ask how many hours they spend on social media. Not once has one of those people said, "I don't use social media." That's not a study, it's not scientific. But in my 40-something years of dealing with youth, the amount of anxiety and depression among our youth is because their sense of home has been destroyed. I used to go home and I was safe. When we would move to a new place, we were picked on as the new kids. It took a while to get to fit in. Home was always safe. Now when you go home, the outside world can get to you. I've heard over 10 hours of confessions of kids in the last week, and over 3 hours of adults. Parents, I'm not saying any of your kids have come to me. You don't know what they're doing, I promise you. A lot of them. Good kids, kids that are going to Catholic schools or went to the youth spectacular yesterday. Love your kids enough to say no. Look at the suicide rate among TikTok users. Look at all those people with gender identity issues. And look at how many of them are on things like TikTok. And look at the kids that don't have access to that. As a society, it's not just the kids, it's adults. How many times do we look at our prayer time and realize, because we're using our phones, that we get distracted? I get up in the morning, because I have to leave my phone on overnight because of the hospital. My phone goes on airplane mode. Until my prayer time is done, my phone is off, because I use my phone for prayer. And all it takes is one of those little bleeps that somebody had a really good Wordle score, New York Times mini score, and I go, "Ooh, I want to beat that." Got to turn that off. I have to shut all that out and take time just with God. As we're here with these people in this process, we're helping them. They're spending specific time focusing on God every week as a group, and hopefully every day at home. How are we doing that in our lives? Do you know there's a version of TikTok in China, which, by the way, owns TikTok? Guess what? If you go someplace inappropriate, your parents get a message. They don't offer that to us. If you've been on it too long and you haven't, it'll say, "Have you done your homework?" It'll check up on you. It's very different. I spent some time with a guy that's an expert in China. There's all sorts of other things to be scared about with that. But just what TikTok does is horrific in my mind. I'll never install it on a device because you can't get it off. They have you. They have everything on your phone. Read the end user licensing agreement to EULA. You're theirs. But shouldn't we be God's? I think as a society, we're blind to the effects of what all these different apps have on us. I long for the days that I was just upset about Snapchat, because I don't understand why you'd want, never mind, we won't even go there. But what are we using for good? How often do we post something in the world that makes the world think about God? I've started in different places and different groups that I'm a part of when people start griping about everything, to point out the good, to point out where God is. I'm a one tiny little voice. But if all of us realize that that sense of home, that sense of what God wants from us, is rooted in who and what we are and in God, and realize the amount of time our devices are sucking from us, and these apps are intentionally breaking us down as a society. Think about that. Intentionally breaking us down as a society. We have to stand up. We have to stand up for our faith. Look at how much time you spend on your phone. If you have a wonderful phone like mine, it'll tell you how much by app. I'm sometimes ashamed to say my YouTube time exceeds my prayer time. I have to fix that. Now, I do spend prayer time without my phone, my quiet time. Is that making God the most important thing in my life? When the time I'm spending is looking at different things. I've just spent a whole lot of time looking at carburetors and how I have a slight problem with my 88 car. So I'm going through and I get sucked in, and that's not even with that algorithm that TikTok has, and different ways I can make it work better. Is that what God wants? God's calling us. That loneliness that sometimes brings us to our phones is really God calling us into that deeper relationship. So as we're about to go through our scrutiny with our people in the OCIA and OCIC process, our elect, let us ask ourselves, what is that time that is getting sucked out of our lives by things that have nothing to do with God? And how can we make a commitment for the rest of Lent and the rest of our lives to focus more on what's holy, what is good, that which can truly make a difference in this world, and not that which is intentionally created to dilute this message of the gospel, to take us away from what is truly holy, and to help us to be God's people, living in that light of faith and not being addicted to these programs that only bring about bad. If you email me, I will send you what a friend of mine put together on TikTok. It's based in a study from somewhere I don't remember, and I'll send that to you. I'm not going to debate it. I've talked to enough people. It is what it is, but I'll send it out. We're working very hard in our school so our kids can discern and make the right choices in our youth groups and everything else. But we need to support our families to make the right choices because it isn't easy. And I realize as I say this, I have a bunch of kids looking at me like, I wish you'd shut up. I wish you'd sit down. It's not the gospel. It isn't what I can do. I spent a whole lot of my life working for young people and working that they can be church and have this place as home. We have to stop and get rid of those influences that we've been blind to. As a society, it's just easier. Go out to a restaurant and you see a parent give a device to a kid and they go, shh, let us have dinner. That's not family time. That's not home time. Home time, that's why I don't care about kids screaming in church. They're kids. They have to learn. They have to be here. They are God's children. Each of us, as God's children, need to strive for what is truly holy